Alright, so the third in Flashgator's requests are come along the same lines. I wanted to knock all these out at the same time because they kind of chain into each other. The third one is the Emperor discussing his plans for the siege with Malcador. Now, I'm going to provide a link in the previous video to chain into this one. And I might just put these two, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I'll figure it out. I might just put it in the playlist and have it as its own separate entity. Now, he also asked me for my views on Emperor and his humanity. I've been discussing that at length in the Mistakes of the Emperor series. If you haven't seen that, please take a look at it. But this is when the Emperor actually made his decision on what he was going to do for the siege. But we're going to go ahead and watch this. This short story was absolutely outstanding. And frankly, let's just go.
Hey everyone, Wolflord Rowe here. Today we continue our look at the Emperor and Malcador playing a game of tactics. And boy, did things just get serious. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, then be sure to go watch that previous upload first. But, spoiler warning to begin. The events we are covering today are from the short story The Board is Set. And as always, I really recommend you read this for yourself first. Not only do you get the most enjoyment out of it this way, but we help to support the Great Black Library and Games Workshop. Because without them, we don't have this amazing lore to talk about. As usual, there will be a link in the description to the novel on the Black Library website for those interested. And seriously guys, this is like £2.50. It's a no-brainer. But with that said, let's jump straight in. So when we left off, things had suddenly taken a very serious turn, with everything going along the expected lines and...
If you're wondering where the puppy has been, I put her in her kennel for now and put a sheet, like a blanket over her. This lets her know that she has gone too far and she needs to chill out because she's getting too Grimaldus.
Till Mortarion had become corrupted by Nurgle. This was clearly something unexpected by the Emperor, as he had suddenly become enraptured in the game. Malcador, however, had suddenly come to the realization that his lord, the infallible, all-knowing Emperor of mankind, had moved into uncharted waters, and that this could very well be the moment he decides his actions. As War Master, he had to test Revelation's thinking every bit as much as Horus would challenge it in real life. If he did not... "I cannot do this," he said, straightening as he pulled his hands back from the board. "What would you give for me?" asked Revelation, once more laying his hands in his lap, his attention focused on the sigillite. "My life. You have already given that. My death, if you wish to be pedantic. What of your soul? You say that no such thing exists. We are short on time. Allow me a little metaphysical shorthand. What is your soul worth to you?" I still do not understand the question. Uncomfortable under the scrutiny of his lord, Malcador started to consider the board again. "I cannot play like Horus. I do not have his mind, his motivations." For possibly the first time ever here, we see Malcador struggling against the pressure of the moment. This is the man we've seen acting as head of the Imperium in the Emperor's stead. The single most important man in the entire Imperium. As an uncle to demigod Primarchs. A man we have seen face down free and belittle free Primarchs without breaking a sweat. But now, for the first time ever, he doesn't have the knowledge that the Emperor has a grand plan in the back of his mind. That safety blanket as such is gone. So here, with the entire fate of mankind's survival landing squarely in his lap in this moment, with him having to perform as well as Horus would.
See, I like Wolflord Rowe's method of delivery here. He goes through certain passages. Especially dialogues, he goes through the dialogue and then he gives his own thoughts on the internal workings of those characters. And sometimes that is very much needed because sometimes you don't really get the context. Maybe you just picked up one book out of like 5 because you wanted to get ahead in the storyline and you hope that the book would, give you some more information. Or maybe it's the first time you're ever reading it and you just picked it up and then you're being thrust into this whole area where there's characters with full storylines that you haven't got before. Black Library has a mountain of books. An absolute mountain of books. The Horus Heresy series is over 50 books. I mean, sometimes stuff like this is actually really, really needed. And I like what he's doing here.
It's all a bit too much for him. He's not a genetically created demigod, he's a mere human being. Extremely psychically powerful, yes, and quite possibly a perpetual, but still very much human. And like any human put under that kind of stress, he's finally cracking. He can't do this. But the Emperor needs him to. This is the one moment they have to try and take back the advantage from Chaos. The one chance to just maybe get some kind of plan against what's to come. Then I will assist you. Revelation reached into the game box and his fingers reappeared holding a new piece, one never seen before. It was shaped like a jester of the most ancient days, complete with gormless expression. Real, tiny capped bells tinkled as Revelation shook it. This is you, Malcador. The Fool. I have used you for millennia to suit my own purposes, and before the end, I will discard you without a second thought. I know what you're doing, said Malcador. You think to make me angry, like Horus. And so the Emperor taunts Malcador to try and get him angry, to continue the game truly trying to win. It's no good if Malcador continues but isn't truly trying to win.
Right.
He has to be a War Master. The War Master, Horus. Fueled with anger and desire to beat the Emperor. I've seen some people think this is the Emperor's true thoughts on Malcador, and of course we're all entitled to interpret the lore in whatever way we want. That's our opinion and that's our right. However, for me, it's pretty obvious what the Emperor is up to here. The Emperor is just trying to anger Malcador to continue the game and try to win. He needs him to. Quite literally, the fate of mankind is depending on it. There's some very interesting lines in the exchange nonetheless. I see that you are starting to understand. A hint of a sneer marred Revelation's expression. He gestured towards the pieces set between them. My sons were taken from me, whispered to during transit, to set dark thoughts in their minds. Temptations, lies, propaganda. Tell me, Malcador the Sigillite, how many times have you resisted the efforts of our enemies' laws? First off, my sons were taken from me. As we've seen before in the Emperor's private conversations with Malcador, he refers to the Primarchs as his sons. Not the Primarchs, not number 1 to 20, my sons. There are no Primarchs here for him to try and bond with. It's just him and Malcador, the man who helped create them. They are his sons. And then the following line of being whispered to by the Chaos Gods.
I disagree. I disagree. He did not view He did not view the Primarchs. He didn't really consider them that, but what happened with Magnus made things shift a good deal.
As they were whisked away, of temptations and lies. It's very clear the Emperor's opinion on the Chaos Gods here. For whatever rumours and stories of the bargain he made with the Dark Gods of Chaos, it's pretty clear here. Temptations, lies and propaganda. And then the final line here, asking Malcador how many times have the Chaos Gods tried to tempt him. Malcador, he doesn't answer, because he doesn't need to. They both know the answer is never. And the Emperor tries to use it as an attempt to continue angering Malcador by saying that it must be because you have nothing to offer. And Malcador appears to kind of foolishly buy this, trying to reason he has created much for the Emperor, that there would be no Imperium without his efforts. The real truth is abundantly clear, to me at least, because even the gods of chaos knew they could never turn Malcador. Never has there been a more loyal servant in all of the Imperium than Malcador the Sigillite.
And it was because the Emperor gave him a chance for redemption. And basically, Malcador had a very, very bad past, apparently. And it's one that does not go into in the lore, but apparently it was bad enough to where when the Khan confronted him about it, he told him that Horus knew who Malcador actually was. So Malcador's name, his true name, is not Malcador.
It's played off a bit like Malcador is getting upset at the words until finally he snaps and does get angry. But not angry as you would think at the Emperor's words. Malcador looked at the splintered pieces of the fall. Betrayal slid a hot knife in his chest. Its fire spread, inflaming his anger. And one thought burned hotter than any other. That revelation thought he might care about any of what he had said. I have never harboured ambition or sought glory, growled the regent, his fingers moving to the king of nothing. He thrust it directly towards the angel, defending the Emperor's home. You seek to wound a pride that does not exist, but you think it does, and that is your shame, not mine. It is your pride that will undo us all, not mine. He turned the top card. The picture that resolved upon its surface showed a mounting of bodies with a hound at its top, muzzle red with their blood. Massacre, snapped Malcador. It's the Emperor's intentions that have ultimately angered Malcador. The Emperor has tried to anger Malcador into playing by attacking his ego and pride, telling him he means nothing to him. He's useless. He's done nothing for the Imperium. And after all the centuries together of complete and utter loyalty, it's the thought that the Emperor thinks he can anger Malcador like that has pissed him off. And this actually makes a lot of sense. He's not a fool. And the Emperor, as elevated above humanity as he is, has guessed at using a rather basic and primitive attempt to get Malcador angry by essentially calling him names. But like I've said, Malcador has served the Emperor more loyally than anyone for centuries. Do you really think that is going to anger him when he knows there has been no one more loyal than him? And there is no one that has been by the side of the Emperor more, or knows the Emperor better than him. Luckily for the Emperor, the ends justify the means, and even if it's not the way he intended, he has got Malcador mad. And so they continued the game, with a totally PO'd Malcador going for the win, with no sentimentality for the Emperor or the Primarchs he controls. But the Emperor is managing to hold him off, even playing a card to get the traitor Primarchs feuding with each other. Malcador loses control of Fulgrim, but ultimately manages to pull the Khan away from the side of Dawn. But the Emperor still clings on, until the Emperor finally has Lehman Russ, Lionel Johnson and Rabute Gilliman all poised to strike the traitors from the rear. I win in my next move, declared Revelation, dropping the salvation card in front of his regent. Malcador looked at the portrait writ in the coloured crystal, unmistakably that of Rabute Gilliman. A turn too late, Malcador replied, his expression grim as he realised the meaning of what he was about to do. He whispered the next word as he turned a card depicting a blooded white feather. Sacrifice. With shaking fingers he picked up the angel and removed it from the board, leaving an opening in Revelation's defence. His fingers gripped another piece, about to move it into the space. A piece he had been holding back for just that occurrence. The last to have been given to him, though in reality, it was the first revelation had put into motion. The Lord of Hearts. What a great little passage this is. As we know, Rabute Gilliman is pressing the traitors, pushing them for time. But it's going to be too late. And then the sacrifice of Sanguinius. Quite possibly Malcador and the Emperor learning of Sanguinius' sacrifice against Horus for the very first time. Of what's to come, or at least what's possibly to come. You know, there's really very little written between the Emperor and Sanguinius. In fact, practically nothing. And yet we've known throughout virtually the entire series of Sanguinius' devotion to his father. So much so he is knowingly going to his death in the knowledge of it possibly just leading to the Emperor's victory. We really need to be given some Sanguinius and Emperor scenes before the end. And I don't just mean a knowing look or word between the two as they board the vengeful spirit. I want Sanguinius meeting the Emperor's reaction to his winged son. Show us why he never wavered in his loyalty to the Emperor. The single word, softly spoken, stopped Malcador as surely as a roared command. Still with the Lord of Hearts poised to claim victory, the Regent looked up. Revelation stared at Malcador, seizing him with his dark eyes. The Regent was not sure what he saw in there, aside from tiny reflections of himself, haggard within the shadow of his hood, cheeks glistening with the streak of tears. "I win," croaked the Sigillite. But as he returned his attention to the board to place the King of Hearts, there was another piece occupying the space he had to take, the Fool. In ancient days, the Fool could say anything to anyone, in theory at least, Revelation said. He smiled and warmth flooded through Malcador to see the expression. But then both the smile and his moment of hope faded. It was the Fool's task to remind kings and queens that they were mortal and weak, and not above any other. In the parlance of a later time, they existed to speak truth to power, to defy authority and, most importantly, puncture tyranny. Malcador choked on his next words, not sure what to say. Even at the instant that he collected his thoughts, a distant ripple flushed through his mind. It stank in his nostrils and brought the thunder of a great storm to his ears, prickling skin and psychic sense alike. He felt the rift opening, tearing apart reality at the edge of the solar system. A chorus of infernal clarions screeched across his other sense. "The War Master has arrived," he said, though he knew his opponent could not fail to know also. He looked up, but the chair opposite was empty. Now, I never want to hear the Emperor doesn't care for his sons or Malcador. Nonsense ever again.
He did, in his own way. He did in his own way. Malcador he actually gave a shit about. And I'll go into reasons by that later why I feel that way. His sons he viewed primarily as tools. That's just brass tacks. But it's hard to explain without going into a 30-minute long thing on the nature of the Emperor himself. Malcador had been around for an extremely long time for a mortal. The Emperor had gotten a chance to really know him and knew that he was going to be around. The Primarchs were brand new to him. In terms of it, they had only been there for a few minutes of the Emperor's life if you take it and scale it down. So, it is what it is.
You hear me, you heretics? This is one of the greatest paragraphs in all of the lore. Not just the Heresy series, all of the lore. This is the Emperor of Mankind saying how important Malcador is. In ancient days, the Fool could say anything to anyone, in theory at least, Revelation said. He smiled and warmth flooded through Malcador to see the expression. The Emperor essentially saying to his friend, "You're the one person who has always spoken to me freely and truthfully." It was the fool's task to remind kings and queens that they were mortal and weak and not above any other. They existed to speak truth to power, to defy authority and, most importantly, puncture tyranny. The Emperor telling Malcador that he has needed him. This is him saying thank you to his friend. I think in this moment the Emperor realises what Malcador is going to be needed to do, and what he will gladly do, the sacrifice he will make for the Imperium. The first time I read this, it was great, but I don't think I quite understood the gravity of what the Emperor is saying to his friend here in this moment. This is one of the most poignant passages I've read in the whole of the Horus Heresy series. A series filled with touching moments in between the epic battle scenes of Primarchs. But there's few that match this. If we get a goodbye, my friend, after the Emperor awakens, after Malcador has saved the last of his strength to give him upon the Golden Throne, oh man, the feels!
Yeah.
I know there's many of you who like the Master of Mankind novel Emperor, but this right here, this is the Emperor of Mankind I think of. And so it finishes with Malcador being distracted by an attendant asking who he's talking to. Because of course the Emperor isn't there, physically at least. He's always still been upon the Golden Throne, holding back the tides of the warp and the hordes of demons rushing to terror. Malcador was not sure as he followed her gaze, seeing the pieces arranged at the endgame, the Lord of Hearts still in his hand. Yet where the Fool had been was now another piece, uniquely golden, shaped as a crown. Beside it lay the last crystal card, its image that of an eagle tearing out the throat of a serpent. And there we have it. The eagle tearing out the throat of a serpent. Does this mean the Emperor knows he can achieve an Imperial victory? Does it mean he knows he has to face Horus himself to get it? Only through the sacrifices of Sanguinius and Malcador. Interpret it how you wish, but one thing is for sure, the Emperor now has a plan, and it's thanks to his most loyal servant of all, Malcador. What a great short story this is. Seriously, I cannot recommend it enough. Such a great read. But what did you guys think? Fans of the Malcador and Emperor scenes like me? When are we going to get a Malcador model? That's what I want to know. We need a Malcador the Sigillite model. The guy's an absolute legend, he really is. As always, drop your thoughts of what we've gone through down below. I love to read your thoughts and opinions. But
I would love to see his thoughts on the mistakes of the Emperor series that I'm making, especially what's going to be coming next. After, well, I'm not going to say anything. We'll see. We'll see what's said. Everything else like that. Until then, guys, I'll catch you then. I would really like to see how he views the mistakes of the Emperor series, because it's not so much that the Emperor didn't. He viewed his sons as tools, but it's so hard to explain this if I don't sit down and actually write it out to get all the words right. And when I say something like this, I want to get the words right. In any case, I'll catch you guys next time.